been having town hall meetings in the state of Arizona for 30 years. And I don't know how many hundreds that I've had. And I enjoy them, and the give and take is fun. And I believe that to have give and take and spirited discussion on issues that are important to people and to me and to you is both illuminating and educational, and sometimes a lot of fun. So I look forward to us having exchanges, and people who somehow don't like that. That's what town hall meetings are supposed to be all about, and I have enjoyed them, and I will continue to allow people to express their views, but I also hope it will be done in a respectful manner, and I in turn will respect anyone who has a disagreement with me, as has happened from time to time over the last 30 years, especially in light of the approval of Congress, as you know, which is now down to 11%. We're now down to paid staffers and blood relatives. I don't know if I came home just a few days ago from trying to do the Lord's work in the city of Satan, and a guy ran up to me at Sky Harbor Airport and said, "Hey," he said, "anybody ever tell you look a lot like Senator John McCain?" I said, "Yeah." And he says, "Doesn't it sometimes just make you mad as hell?" So I think I'm aware of the mood of the public and their view of the work that is being done in Washington. And there are many issues. And overriding all of this, of course, is the debt and the deficit. And I hope we'll have a chance to talk a bit about that. Simpson and Bowles came up with a new proposal today. I think it is a good framework for getting our debt and deficit under control. The economy of the state and the economy of the country is slowly improving, and we can see, I believe, some gradual improvement in the upcoming short term. But I know of no economist in the world that believes that we can continue as we are doing with the debts and deficit without fundamental changes. We have got to stop spending our children and grandchildren's money. There's a debt of $51,000 for every man, woman, and child in America. We've gone from $10 trillion to $16 trillion debt. It's unconscionable, and it's an outrage. The greatest thing about this country is that every generation of Americans has passed on to the next generation a better nation than the one they inherited. I cannot tell you that our children and grandchildren will inherit a better nation than the one we have had the honor and privilege of growing up in, unless we get this debt and deficit under control. Now, I want to talk to you about two more points very quickly. There's a thing called sequestration. Up until a short time ago, a lot of Americans didn't know exactly what we were talking about with sequestration. Now, in 9 days, it's about to kick in. That was a bad idea of reducing spending by some $1.2 trillion. A select committee, if they didn't come to agreement, then the cuts would be automatic. Now, we are now facing a situation where our nation's security is at risk. Don't take my word for it. Take the word for it of our Secretary of Defense, Leon Panetta, who said that it would be a devastating blow to our national security. The Chief of Staff of the Army just announced a few days ago that he could not replace those who are now serving in Afghanistan because he didn't have sufficient funds to train the ones to replace them with. The list goes on and on. Today, the Department of Defense has announced furloughs of up to 800,000 civilian employees. Up to 800,000 civilian employees. In the state of Arizona, it means about reductions of approximately 45,000 jobs in the state of Arizona. As you know, we have a huge facility out here that makes the Apache helicopter, Raytheon down in Tucson, and literally thousands of employees of contractors that do business with them. So it's time for the President of the United States, whose primary job is our nation's security and Commander-in-Chief, to call us over to the White House and sit down and work together and avert this looming catastrophe. There is nothing more important than our nation's security. I can find you lots of ways to cut spending in defense, But I would remind you that it is defense and national security, which is the only portion of government which has received reductions in the last couple of years, while the rest of government has grown. We are already planning on $487 billion in cuts. We've already implemented $87 billion in cuts, and there's more coming. Okay, so I'd be glad to talk to you about that, and it is, I think, of utmost and serious consequences. It would be, as I mentioned, 49,000 jobs in Arizona. Now let's talk about comprehensive immigration reform. There are approximately 11 million people living in this country who are here illegally. In 1986, with our beloved President Reagan, we gave amnesty to 3 million people who were in this country illegally, on the promise that we would secure the borders and that we would never have to address this issue again. Obviously, we did not secure the borders, and we now have 11 million people who are in this country illegally. So it is pretty obvious that if we are going to enact comprehensive immigration reform, then we have to be assured there will not be a third wave 10 or 15 or 20 years from now of illegal immigrants who have been able to come into this country. So it means we have to have a secure border. It means that we have to not only do a lot of the things that we have done. If you look on the chart on the right, which is not very readable, you'll see the spending that we have in millions of dollars that we have enacted. There has been improvements on the border. There has been, especially in the human sector, the human sector is dramatically improved. And you can see a man there shaking his head. No, go down and talk to the sheriff down in Yuma County. And well, I just talked to him yesterday, so maybe you ought to catch up with him. The fact is that it is more secure than it was before. But the fact is that it is not secure. And what we need to do, besides, and by the way, our Border Patrol has gone from 7,000 to 21,000. And so there has been significant improvements have been made, but not enough. And we need to use the technology that we learned in Afghanistan and Iraq for surveillance, using drones, using other capabilities that we have. And I have seen that in some areas of our border where we have been able to surveil and to interdict. I would also like to point out to you one other aspect of this. Arizona is still the main transshipment point. The Arizona-Sonora border is still the main transshipment point for drugs from Mexico. There are now guides still sitting on mountaintops between here and the border that are guiding the drug cartels as they bring drugs to Phoenix, where they are distributed all over the country. That is a threat to our children and our grandchildren as well as us. So we need